please.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chairman, me koutou hoki ngā memo o te kaunihira, me ngā kaimahi, he karaki a poto mo tātou kei noi tātou. He honore he korore ki te atua, he mau ngā rongo ki te mato o te whenua e whakaaro pai ki ngā tāngata kuamine. Hāngai te atua he ngā kauhau he roto ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatongi o tō wairua tapu, hei a whina hei tohoto i a mātou, kōrero I tēnei rā, koe hukarai te koto mātou kai whakaora. Āmene. Kia ora, Mr. Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor White. Next item on the agenda is apologies. So we have apologies from Councillor Nees and Councillor McMillan, who may join later. We have no contact to the moment from Councillor Iti, so we'll put his apologies in as well. Who else? And on Zoom we have Councillors Kevin Winters, Councillor Mati Moana McDonald, Councillor Te Taru White and Councillor Thurston. That's about the lot, isn't it?
Councillor Shirley.
Well, Councillor Shirley, he's here, yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll move those apologies be accepted. Councillor Campbell, second. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. There is no public forum. Items not on the agenda. Any items not on the agenda councillors want to raise at the conclusion of the diaried agenda? If not, thank you. Order of business. No changes to the order of business. Declaration of conflicts of interest. I believe there are any. Public excluded business to be transferred into the open. There is none. Right, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have Dean and Nigel Tuck. Can I join us onto the presenters table, please? And Dean will introduce our guests. Oh. We haven't moved into confidential yet. Just pause, sorry.
Move we go into confidential. Seconded. Councillor Scott. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. You were doing it now.
That's in open.
Now.
We're doing that now in open.
Yeah. Seconded. Councillor Crosby. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. So procurement total mobility contracts. Mike Seaborn.
Kia ora, councillors. This will be nowhere near as exciting as that previous discussion. However, it's very important to us, so I'd love to get this in front of you and have a bit of a discussion today. Councillors, this paper is really about housekeeping and tidying up our approach and our commercial focus around total mobility. And I think the paper sort of outlines some of the challenges we've got here around the growth in total mobility, the number of people that are using it, largely very much driven off the back of a subsidy, but also there's a rising demand that is underpinning all of that. So what we have is a way of managing this process that has largely been reasonably sort of organic, and it's sized itself to meet the demand, but lately we've found that a bit difficult. So what we're suggesting is some changes that help us to manage this a bit more efficiently. Gets us across the things like who qualifies for these contracts, the assurance process that we've stipulated in the paper there to make sure that we're doing things the right way on a consistent basis, and a contract terms that are pretty clear to the people who want to provide the service to us. So we're putting ourselves back on that level footing with the people who do this for us. And I think it helps not only us from a commerciality perspective, but it also helps our customers know they're going to get the right service and the right level of service. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the paper itself, just to note a couple of things. And one point we always like to make with total mobility is that the scheme has no minimum threshold in terms of what you can use, but there's a 75% discount that applies until a maximum subsidy is reached. So there is sort of an upper limit to the way that people can use this service, and that's all that really exists within this, and that is stipulated by Waka Kotahi and the way that we work with them. So without going to the detail of the paper, I'm happy to take questions from there.
So Scott.
Yeah, just the thing that struck out to me is, of course, the problems of communication that happened in central government with regarding to changes in disability rules. Now, this is about the procurement of the supplier rather than the customer, but really just to make sure that you're really aware of the risk that the communication doesn't get miscommunicated, or there is miscommunication, whether by us or by potential providers who are affected. Just to be aware that is a big risk and it's hard to pull back once it gets out there.
Agreed, and it is noted we do our best to make sure that we're clear about what we are doing and what is happening around us. But it is a challenge, an ongoing challenge, and a team in connection with our customers on a regular basis around that. So, yep, point taken.
Bond Adelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would be helpful, which didn't get detail that I saw in the paper, the SURF funding, which is, if you could explain that and what the significance of that is with regards to the draft GPS for transport. Is it because it is a substantial amount of money? Is that can we look forward to that continuing? Could you explain that? That's my first question.
So the short answer is yes. We've had confirmation from Waka Kotahi that subsidy remains in place. We have not read the GPS we have read the GPS and inside the GPS, there's no indication that subsidy is going to change. There's no guarantee overall, but at the same time, there's no signal coming out of government that this situation will change yet.
So specifically, can you explain what it actually, that particular subsidy actually is?
In terms of dollar amounts?
No.
Oh, the acronym, really.
Yeah.
Climate Emergency Response Fund. It was the fund in itself was set up to help fund projects right across the public sector around things that would assist and enable people moving towards sort of public transport measures as well as total mobility and increase accessibility across the transport system. So very loose sort of definition and purpose, but at the same time, the subsidy itself was targeted at the total mobility scheme around the country for all regional councils to take up. And they did it by subsidising the travel of this particular customer group. And at the stage, the Waka Kotahi has confirmed that subsidy still exists, and so we will be paid for.
So, because we do need to just be very clear on this, and that's what worries me, because it seems like there was a definitive amount of money put in, and it's climate emergency facility. It just response fund. It doesn't look, reading the title doesn't give me faith that it will be there for, because it was a one-off pot of money that was put in. So how long do you expect that pot that was put in to last for? And you're saying you're expecting it to, or Waka Kotahi are expecting to be topped up. I haven't got confidence myself long-term that is going to be around. And if it's not, what's our plan B?
Sure, point fairly made. In terms of the SURF funding itself, you will remember that some of the SURF funding has been stopped. Waka Kotahi has pulled back from funding projects like the Rotorua proposal that we had in front of you from the SURF fund because it's unable to fund them going forward, has no surety of that funding. So in that light, their commitment to this part of it is rings more true, I guess. What the fund, the future of the fund is, or where the money will come from going forward from Waka Kotahi, I am unsure. But I think in that light, it gives you some level of certainty that in the tightening of the purse strings that's happening within government to change the new GPS, this particular stream of funding is more certain, particularly more certain than others. But I can't give you too many more guarantees than that.
Okay, and the second question, I'm not very happy with the answer, by the way, and I know you're doing your best, because you don't know any more than we do, actually, but it's just the word of an individual at this stage. So that's fine. But I thought our council needs to understand that. The second one is when you gave us and you have been pre-alerted to this, the Arataki report in the last public transport committee meeting, which gave all the public transport numbers and including total mobility, we never received any indication as to the dollar amounts So we don't know anything about the dollar amounts except for the first quarter in 21-22. We know the patronage, and the patronage has gone up, but the cost of the operation to us, have you been able to get that for us?
Yeah, I have. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to go. The actuals up to this point for the first 2 quarters of this year are in the vicinity of $852,000. So that puts us on track for about a 1.39 spend. So we're basically tracking on budget for what we budgeted for this financial year with regard to those 2 quarterly numbers.
So if I look at the track history on the patronage, yeah, it was costing us in the 546,000 in 17-18, 483,000, 558,000, 540,000, and then we don't have the data. I don't have the data after that, and then suddenly I see 1.393. Is that 1.393 on page 34 of 14 of this report, where there's that table that says total mobility, procurement items, the draft budget, annual plan, and then draft budgets going forward. Is that the same figure that we're talking about there? Is that does that replicate into the figures that we've got historically had for the dollar amounts?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's built up as per the LTP on that trend. And it's a mixture of inflation and also that potential patronage growth. We are conservative in our estimates around patronage. And we do believe that this is a number, particularly because this is a threshold for a procurement discussion. This is a number that keeps council within in a safety zone with regard to this decision. So this is the threshold, the ceiling by which we will hold ourselves to account in terms of the process that we're suggesting that we've put into place. So we're creating an operational response. And if it goes over this number, then we're above a budgeted threshold, which we need to bring back to council and seek your decision around any changes from that perspective.
So the patronage had been falling ever since 2003. Actually, the total mobility had fallen until we got to 22-23, and then it went up about 30% that year. And then this current year, it looks like it's going to be 30% above that again. So there's been a big lift in the last 2 years. Can you explain to us as a council what changed that has got such a big patronage increase just in the last, actually in the last year, really?
So just before you answer that, Mike, just to help me, the figures that you're referring to, are they net of the subsidy, or does it include the subsidy? Because you're getting up to $1.4 million, and I think the questions
Total cost, yeah.
Councillor von Duddleson's asking are really fair questions in terms of the growth of that cost centre. So are they ones that the net position that BOPRC pays?
No, they are
They're the gross figures
gross figures.
that then have to have the subsidy taken, which makes a
Correct.
difference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Patronage question? Yeah.
Right, back to the patronage question. In terms of that large leap, the subsidies had a huge impact on people using the service. It is cheaper for our customers to use it, but don't forget our patronage numbers in passenger transport is also stepped up greatly. So the same things that affect people using passenger transport affect people using total mobility. So whilst they may not be as strong, particularly in this space, they do have an impact. And so there are other smaller factors in, but staff's opinion would be that the subsidy has helped enormously. And then there's background pricing signals like fuel price and other things like that that have also helped. I think the discussion today is around what's an operationally efficient way and safe way of making these decisions to get our operations in a better state of order. And I think from our perspective, we're providing council with a threshold here that's sensible. So we're in a position now with 2 years of data where it's stepped up twice. And there are two ways that can go. That can go up or it can go down. This allows you and allows us to have the operational room to be able to make decisions in the positive scenario, and in the negative scenario, we're still in safe ground from a procurement perspective. But it also, I'd like to point out that there are increased thresholds of assurance and tests that currently we don't think we do well enough, and we'd like to make sure that they are inputted in here and signal to those operators, and this is part of what procurement strategy will do, give a clear signal to them that our expectations are changing, the level of assurance we need is higher, and the gateway is a test that isn't going to be something that we are willing to back away from. So there's another operational efficiency benefit out of the potential proposal.
Mr. Chair, just to finish, just be very clear that I'm absolutely in support of total mobility. So don't get me wrong. It's not that I believe our councillors need to understand the ramifications of actually going at a cost from 540,000 to 1.3 is not in the overall budget of public transport, which is in the 40+ million. It's not a big number, but so I'm just trying to be robust. I'm not trying to be unconstructive. I'm just trying to help councillors to understand the quantum. That's all.
Just in light of your question that you asked about being net or growth, can I just ask a question, because I'm a bit confused about that now, because at the top of page 17, it talks about the total cost of the supply arrangement is 3.7 million. What does that include then?
That's the total cost of our arrangement, particularly with this contract around what we might have here. So I don't actually know the answer to that question. I'm not going to answer it until I get the right answer. Sorry about that. I'll just have to check it.
Well, we can't check it in 5 minutes, can you? Councillor Shirley?
Thank you, Chair. Mike, I'm like Councillor Dardison. I totally support total mobility conceptually, but what's sort of in the back of my mind is concerned is the criteria for qualifying and targeting, and how robust is that at the margins? On the basis that there's an infinite demand for free goods, and this could blow out massively. And it really comes back to the application of who qualifies, the targeting of that, and the robustness of that. Can you sort of help us there in terms of?
Sure. In terms of like the thresholds for people who qualify for total mobility, it's set by Waka Kotahi. So there is a little bit of commentary in there, and in truth, that leaves council open to the local share cost of growth inside the total mobility. And whilst there is a cap to each of the rides, the overall growth, there is a risk to council that keeps growing, and there is that patronage at the moment is going up. So there is an open-ended risk to council around the growth of total mobility, particularly with local share. At the moment, that's been somewhat offset by the subsidy going forward, but at the same time, that isn't capped. What is happening in the sector is, I think all regional councils are worried about that. And from our perspective, we're giving feedback on the need for caps and protect councils from the potential open-ended cost in that. There is a natural level where you hit the top of the market anyway, but I think there is a generalised worry around not having that mechanism in place. At the moment, we are bound to the agreement with Waka Kotahi around how this operates.
There will always be pressures for ever expanding qualification.
Yes. I think one of the parts of this process is for us to tighten also on our criteria around how we service that. So whilst that is in place, we're looking to make sure that we get better data. We understand the trips better. Is the system that we have been operating and used well and in the right way? And I think this will help us shore up our understanding of what we're doing and what we can control in a better way.
I think, Mike, I mean, you can see these are good questions. And when I look at the 5 criteria there, that what Councillor Shirley has raised, I mean, some of them are pretty open-ended in terms of people abusing the system, which will ultimately have a constraint on those people who really need it. And I don't know what the process is in terms of auditing, the criteria, but it does raise the issue that I think I heard you say there's a cap from Waka Kotahi or NZTA.
There is a cap on the amount, 75% of the trip. There's a maximum number for each trip that we will be responsible for. But the total number of trips, i.e. the number of customers that can access the service, there is no cap. So there is an open-ended risk around if patronage keeps growing, the local share keeps growing. And we are at the moment in a place where that could keep going. So there is again, as I said, there is a sector concern around that increase, because in the past it wasn't sufficient to be worried about because it was generally quite static. But in the last 2 years, as Councillor Von Danielson's pointed out, that the increases have increased a rising concern for the whole sector.
Councillor Thompson.
What work has been done by your sector to work with the disability sector to analyse this wicked problem and come up with solutions?
In terms of total mobility, the transport, we have a reference group that we attend, and total mobility is a conversation piece in that respect. I don't know if we've worked directly with the disability sector as a group at the national level. I'm unsure about that. I do know that particularly at the local level, our staff and teams work with the disability services and sector to help adjust the services we have in place. And we take feedback in terms of that. But at a national level, I'm unsure.
Yeah, see, unlike my colleagues, I'm not that concerned about the increase in patronage if the eligibility criteria is being appropriately met, because we're providing a public service, a social good, and that means we're fulfilling our community connection role, our outcome role, which we've committed in our long-term plan to. So as Councillor Thurston, is he there? Oh God, he's there, he's about to talk. I'll let him talk, but 1 in 5, Councillor Thurston, I think I hear coming.
Just to correct something I've said earlier, and it's very important, it's not net. It is a gross number that you're seeing in that table. So that would align with the 3.7 that's in the top of there. So that is a gross, what did I just say?
Said it was
3.7 is gross, it is net.
Mr. Thurston.
But colleagues, as you've heard me bang on about this forever, and someone who's lived with this for the last 40 years, to me, this is a good news story. We continually go on about getting more bums on seats, Andrew, on our buses, and this is another dimension of getting people within our region to use public transport. You know, to me, it's a good news story. There, but for the grace of God, go we. Thank God and pray God we never have to use this service. But in terms of accessing it, and question for colleagues, or not colleagues, you know, there's a lot of integrity at risk here with the NGOs who are the gatekeepers for a lot of these folk to access these particular total mobility services. So, you know, and I think of organisations like the Foundation, Disability Action, and IDEA, and CCS. You know, these are organisations who have a lot of credibility at stake to their clients in approving people to have access to this. But guys, this is a good news story, and you know, it's just another dimension to us getting people in the Bay of Plenty to use more and more public transport, and it's capped. You know, we're dealing with a marginalised community. They're on limited budgets and limited incomes, most of them. So, you know, they're not going to go crazy in utilising it. You know, oh, look, I've said enough. Yeah, and I won't mention 1 in 5 again, Councillor.
I think, Councillor Thurston, the point's been made several times that people are in support of this program. I think the point Councillor Thompson raised is really important, that if the sector hasn't had a dialogue with the Disability Services Association in terms of how do you monitor this, and who should apply, then it's about time we did.
Just to add to that conversation, the person who's an expert in this is currently in a hospital bed, but she's communicating to me through Teams. And Waka Kotahi is in strong contact with the disability sector every time they work through the total mobility scheme. And I do understand that there is conversations around the future of this scheme that are waiting for the GPS to land and the government policy statement to become into that position whereby there may be a result out of that. But there is a conversation going on. It's very early days and they are very much in conversation with the disability sector.
Okay, thanks, Mike. That's very good discussion. Clearly, Mr. Von Duddleston, you've done your homework on this particular issue. Councillor Thompson's moved. Seconded, Councillor Von Duddleston. Put the resolution. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Consideration items not on the agenda. There are none. Mr. White, you still with us? Closing karakia, please.
Yes, I'm still with you. Ngā mihi anō kia koutou, mō koutou whakaaro pai, he karakia poto mō tātou. Kei noi tātou. Ke tau ki tātou katoa te ata whai o tō tātou ariki ahu karaiti me te aroho te atua, me te whiringa taihitanga ki te wairua tāpū ake ake. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. So, meet.
Need to stop the recording.
You will close the meeting.